welcome everybody. This is the fifth in the Rethinking series of webinars from Quantum. We are talking Rethinking Effectiveness today. It is not going to be anyone from Quantum. As you can see, we have Chris and Martin here from Capability Bridge, who are specialists in this world. So I am going to be very shortly handing over to those guys to take us through and steer us for the rest of the conversation. But thank you for all for joining. As I say, hopefully we're in for a great session from the guys. Before I do that, obviously, be remiss of me not to do a very quick bit about Quantum. You're all here, you know who we are. I'm not going to dwell on this. I think the thing I wanted to say really is that I think one of the reasons why I wanted to have this this rethinking webinar around effectiveness is because it's something that's very close to our hearts. You know, our sort of mentality around sort of challenging everything that we do and pushing to be better next time sits really closely. So this is all part of that. You know, how can we measure the campaigns that we run? So again, we're really looking forward to it from ourselves as well. So as I say, I'm your host, James. I'm the head of business development here. Those of you who have seen the previous webinars before would have seen me do this. I'll, as I say, shortly be handing over to Martin and Chris, who are our guest speakers from Capability Bridge. I'll let them do their own intros. And then what we'll do is I'll come back in at the end, hopefully, with any questions that you guys may have that we can get sort of cracking and answering as well. So the last thing it remains for me to do before I stop sharing my screen and allow the guys to share their screen is just to give you a very quick kind of overview of what we're going to cover today. So again, it's about setting clear objectives that align with long-term strategy. It's about the importance of an objective setting culture. It's about focusing on high impact activities. It's about continuous improvement, fostering collaboration, and ultimately it's about getting that right level of measurement that for your specific business needs. So I'm looking forward to it. I know that hopefully we all are looking forward to it. Chris, Martin, over to you.
Thanks very much.
Martin, if you could share your screen. Well, look, good afternoon. First of all, I'm Chris Connor. I'm one of the kind of founders of the Capability Bridge. The reason we thought it might be useful to talk to you about this particular subject is we're getting more and more questions from our clients as a consultancy, asking around the question of return on investment and whether return on investment is something that is still kind of valid. And is it something that we should still measure, or do we need to rethink this a little and perhaps start to think slightly differently while still considering return on investment? Because clearly that's a very useful indicator of the activity that you're doing and the effectiveness of your activity. So we thought it would be good to take you through the way that we talk to our clients and discuss and then recommend what they do with regard to their activities and their spend. So that's kind of what we're going to do. As James said, it would be remiss, I guess, of us as well, because you probably don't know us at all, to tell you a little bit about us. We've got one page, so it's not too horrendous to go through. But in essence, we are a commercial and marketing capability business. So what we try to do is bridge capabilities amongst your commercial team, so across the sales and marketing teams primarily, and integrate the thinking that those teams have and the outputs across customers, shoppers, consumers, and channels to both create better activities, but also more sustainable growth over a period of time. So our approach, as you can see by the fact we're only doing one cred slide, is about keeping things simple, focusing on prioritizing growth choices with our clients, and selecting the things that will be the most impactful things to do for them. We tend to work with major FMCG clients, so you can see some of those on the bottom. And we tend to do that across the globe, so not just the UK. In fact, most of our work actually is abroad. So that's me and us, and that's Martin and that's me. So you won't need to see that anymore, I don't think, for your own sanity. And I'll hand over now to Martin, who's going to take you through the thinking and the vast majority of the deck.
Thank you very much, Chris. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this webinar. As Chris said, we're really excited to be able to talk about this topic. And I'd just like to start off with, again, this phrase which most of you, I am absolutely sure, will be at least familiar with. Some of you may be sick to death of it because it's been misquoted, misattributed over this. But it is an old quote. Half of my spend is wasted. I just don't know which half. And the sad thing is that this effectiveness challenge is still around. And a recent survey by Campaign and GfK has shown that proving effectiveness is still the #2 topic and the #2 challenge for European marketers at the moment. And so this is an obdurate problem, an obdurate challenge that through the years where we've got wonderful tools, we've got wonderful data, we've got wonderful means to be able to measure and evaluate, and yet it persists. A lot of marketers find proving effectiveness so difficult to do. And, why is that? One of the things that we've seen, and Chris alluded to over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, particularly since the end of COVID, is that we're being asked by clients about return on investment. Is this the only thing that we should measure? And increasingly what we're seeing is a lot of pressure on our clients to start to deliver short-term objectives. And so that is getting the focus very, very narrowed down onto that. Now, marketing commercial leaders are constantly looking at ways for their teams really to make more effective choices. And when they're looking to achieve their business targets, it's really kind of difficult if they're being channeled down the narrow ROI funnel, when they're saying, but there are wider medium-term and longer-term objectives that we need to meet. But again, there are benefits of looking at shorter-term evaluation. But really, if you are going to build a marketing effectiveness culture that enables evaluation of how we spend, our investment choices achieve both short, medium, and longer-term objectives, we need to start to adopt a different way of looking at it to deliver incremental results here. Now, a lot of you will be also familiar about this gentleman, Peter Field, who is one of the two halves of the Godfathers of Effectiveness, together with Les Binet. And I'm sure you've heard of their famous book, The Long and the Short of It. But basically, he's in agreement and saying, look, if you do start living in the short term, you will die in the long term. Because what he does is he focuses very much his attention on balancing long and short-term objectives. And if you start to put too much focus towards delivering a series of short-term objectives, his research has proven that actually the long-term benefits just aren't there. So he's very much in the camp of saying too much focus on ROI really leads marketers to go after the quick and easy wins. And really you have to start to balance that out with longer-term brand building and branded outcomes. And again, if ROI becomes your guiding principle for decision making, he says it is insanely dangerous because it teaches you only to go for the low-hanging fruit. Ritson, he's also in agreement, and he started to see that campaigns are generally becoming less effective. And he attributes a lot of this because there is this growing focus on ROI. And, it doesn't really play out in the long term either for him. He agrees with Peter Field as well. So if we are going to be looking at making sure that we establish the good for the long term of the business, we have to start to look beyond ROI. So then the question, of course, is what should we measure if we are going beyond ROI? Is there really a better way? In our experience, yes. And we need to measure performance where we balance both short and long-term objectives. And it really is this focus on objectives which help us to be able to look at the longer, medium, and the shorter term. And of course, ROI is all part of this, but it is also based upon fundamentally a return on your objectives. The investment you put behind your objectives is the key thing here. Now, again, one thing that we have to also bear in mind here is that we need to balance out also science versus the creativity that helps us to be able to achieve our objectives. And in order to do that as well, no matter how many black boxes that are thrown your way, or solutions that start to say this will solve your problem about measuring things, it's about building the capabilities within your own marketing teams that enables you to join everything up and get that really clear focus on what are we getting for our objectives. So how do we manage to get the best results when we start to try and create this culture around marketing effectiveness with our clients? Well, really, it starts joining these four elements together, but building capabilities with marketers so that they can more easily link them. And it starts off really understanding the objectives and setting the right targets, tracking the execution of our plans, measuring the results of our campaigns and activities, and then capturing the learnings of what's been done and feeding those back into the following cycle. Okay, so what's the problem, you say? It sounds really easy, and on paper it really is. But it really is a lot harder than that. And I think a lot of it stems back to what we're saying, where marketing teams particularly don't have time to stand still and do this. And so part of it is to be able to create the space and to be able to build element by element in building blocks the capabilities required so that marketing teams get much better at it, and therefore are starting to be able to use the tools that most companies have a lot more effectively to do it. So the way we deliver this very much is through two areas, really. One is making sure that existing processes, frameworks, and toolkits that our clients really have are put together to enable a more rigorous assessment of investments. But equally, in that culture, there needs to be an appetite to have increasing transparency, accountability, and sharing results so that teams are able to link all these four areas and to continuously improve. So how do we do this? Well, we really start with the end in mind. And what we mean about this is not, oh, I need X amount of likes, or oh, I need a TV campaign, or even I need to generate more sales uplift. That's not what we mean by objectives. What we mean really is to start off by saying, how do we link the long-term company strategy all the way through to where normally ROI focuses in the short term at the end, which is around individual activities and sub-activities. But it's the pieces in between in the planning cycle and the planning process that need to start to cascade those objectives down in a more effective way. So going from your strategy to maybe your annual plan objectives, your creative ideas and campaigns to your individual activities. So that, for example, if the question ever does come up and says, well, okay, I need a new TV campaign, you can then start to see, well, why? Where does this link up in terms of your objectives, either into your annual plan or even into your company strategy? And that way, again, you can see the line of sight from your strategy down to what you execute. And equally, what you execute, you can start to link it back up to understanding what objectives they may need to be attributed to. So again, this makes it a lot more easy to be able to link up various elements of the commercial as incredible as it might sound. It also starts linking up a lot of thinking between sales and marketing, who also think in very different fashions. But this starts to get a lot more alignment around those functions themselves. Okay, so I want to start to talk to you about what the common barriers are that get into the way of optimizing marketing effectiveness. Now, this vicious spiral of spend effectiveness is something that we often come across with our clients, and it's really something that is hard for companies to start to break out of. And the first elements of it are that plans really that lack individual objectives and measures often lead to a lack of evidence to track progress and performance, which then in turn starts getting a blame culture and a reluctance to share failures. That then leads to an ability to prove the value of spend to leaders. Time pressure then to get quick results when targets are hit leads our businesses then not to be able to course correct in a very effective way. And so the spiral continues. And Paul Geddes, the CEO of Direct Line, I think he sums it up quite well in the sense that marketing in the round uses a currency and in their speech that is different to the thing that's measured and makes money every week. And that is their problem. And if marketing is then able to move to a conversation beyond ROI, so making sure that we get into ROO, it will also help marketers be heard in the boardroom and particularly by other functions who can understand exactly what the objective of their investments are going to be, how they then plan to set KPIs, how they track and measure it and evaluate it. And it becomes a lot easier up at the boardroom level as well. Okay, that's me taking you through what the issue is. And I'm just going to use an example here and show you an example. And what I'd like you to do is to use the chat as a means to be able to answer some of the questions I'm going to throw at you here. I'm going to show you a piece of communication here, which is a few years old maybe, but is a really, really good example of understanding whether you can really spot what the objective is in a piece of on a piece of communication. So it's for a company called EDS, which was taken over by HP, an IT services provider. And at the time, their brand was suffering from a weak image, and they were also losing market share to a lot of their competitors. This TV ad, it was quite expensive to make. They used a lot of CGI in there. The production was very good for its time, and it went out on mainstream television in the US, but equally they aired it in on the Super Bowl to get extra reach. And in those days, it was about $3 million for a 30-second ad that got you viewed by about 70 million people in one time. So what I'd like you to consider, and please reply in the chat, are three things. First of all, who were EDS really targeting here? Bear in mind they're an IT services provider. Who are they targeting in this campaign? The second thing is, what was the message that they were trying to convey over? And thirdly, if anything, what was the takeout of the recall? So who were they targeting? What was the message? And thirdly, what was the takeout?
Martin, before you play that, let me just quickly interject and say, I think the chat function isn't actually actioned at the moment. So anyone, if you can't use the chat function, please do use the Q&A instead.
Okay then. Sorry. Thanks very much for that, James.
That's all right.
Here's my great grandfather. He was the first cat herder in our family. Herding cats. Don't let anybody tell you it's easy. Anybody can herd cattle. Holding together 10,000 half wild short hairs, that's another thing altogether. Being a cat herder is probably about the toughest thing I think I've ever done.
I got this one this morning, right here. And if you look at his face, it's just ripped to shreds, you know. You see the movies, you hear the stories. I'm living a dream. Not everyone can do what we do. I wouldn't do nothing else. It ain't an easy job, but when you bring a herd into town and you ain't lost a one of them, ain't a feeling like it in the world.
EDS, managing the complexities of the digital economy.
Okay, so any reaction to that, please?
So I'm not sure we've got anything in the Q&A. Let me just have a little look. But I mean, personally, I couldn't answer any of the questions there.
Okay. I suppose
if that helps.
Yeah, but I suppose that's one of the reasons why I use it, because actually it is very, I mean, yeah, it's, I mean, did you find it very engaging?
Yeah, it was an engaging video. But again, great for engagement in video, isn't there? But it's got to say, it's got to have a meaning, right? It's got to have a meaning. Backed up as well. I think we've got a couple of Q&A ones coming in here. Me neither. Thanks for that. And clear as mud. I think is the two ones that have come back. So fortunately, everyone's agreeing with me as well, and to your point as well. So I think that video's done what it needed to do there, Martin.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. And I don't know whether the CEO of EDS at the time just was very proud that, you know, it won quite a few Cannes Awards, and it was on the Super Bowl, and you know, made him look very good with his mates at the golf club. But I suspect it's a very inexpensive way of doing it. So
Hold on, we've got one suggestion coming in as well. So message helps get everything going in the same direction. There we go.
well,
A bold.
at least there was one really good takeout. But I suppose, who were they trying to target here, do you think, given that they were an IT services company? Were they trying to target, I don't know, mainstream consumers like you and me watching the Super Bowl? Or were they trying to target potentially specifically their account managers for their clients? And if so, is this a very effective way of being able to then, what they were looking for as a means to be able to then increase their sales, increase their market share, increase their brand image? It's really unclear as what they're trying to do. But hey, the ad won lots of really good creative.
And there's cats in it, right? Everyone loves a video with animals.
Yeah. We love videos with cats, absolutely. So with that context, I think if we hold that in mind, we use 6 key principles of the return on objectives culture that we embed in with our clients here to inform our judgment. And the 6 key principles, I'll start off with, just go through them briefly, and then I'll go into a little bit more detail and explain what I mean by three of the key ones here. But the first one really is about plan your activities to deliver your core objectives. Spend time doing that, and that is core, because if you miss this, then everything else is going to be much harder to achieve. Make sure that you measure the right things, and we cluster them into output KPIs, input KPIs, and efficiency KPIs. More of that in a minute. Thirdly, it's about integrating your strategy, your annual plans, and your execution, like I mentioned before. So making sure you've got that line of sight going down from your strategy to your execution and backwards again. Link your volume and profit to your objectives only when they are your objectives. And I'll come on to what I mean by that in a minute. Fifthly, it's about developing that culture of ownership, learning, and creativity. So making sure actually that it goes beyond just measuring and evaluating. This is about making sure that actually you can start to get to execute with much more powerful creative ideas that deliver the results that you want, because you know what you're going after, because you know what your objective is, you know what your key KPIs are, and so therefore you have a number of options of ways that you can do that. And then finally, it's about prioritizing which spend to measure and evaluate. So don't try and measure and evaluate everything, just measure what is crucial to help you to understand if you're meeting your objectives. So just very quickly, what I meant by plan your activities to deliver your core objectives. Doing this at the planning stage is crucial. It improves your prioritization. But the second thing about this, again, is make sure that you focus on which behaviors are going to be influenced by your activity as your objective. Reason being is that is a lot more pointed. That is something that you can measure and establish what the deliverable is, versus something that is just, increase sales or increase revenue, because you don't know what kind of quality of sales that you're looking for or what kind of revenue you're looking for. Whereas if you're planning on changing behaviors, that's something that you can follow all the way through from your strategy down through to your execution. Secondly, I mentioned about being really clear about which things to measure and how to group them. The other thing, again, is about set your targets based upon what you need to achieve, not what needs to be done. And there is a very, very clear difference between the two. So I'll start first with output KPIs. And what they are is about the ultimate result you're looking for. That links again to anything that is behavioral, perceptive, or attitudinal. So something like an increase in trial, an increase in preference. That then you can link ultimately to volume and value. You can also link your inputs, which say, okay, if we are looking for an increase in trial, what do we then need to execute, and what do we need to measure in our execution that will then achieve what we're trying to do in terms of getting our trial from X to Y. That will help to know, okay, if we know what the increase in trial is going to be, it's going to influence how we then execute. So if it's about sampling, how many samples do we need to have to achieve that number? How many stores, what quality of stores do we need to go in to be able to get the right kind of trial? And then in terms of efficiency, what we're talking about there is about measuring what's going to be achieved for the effort and the investment expended. And that then helps you to understand, for example, what is the best means and the most efficient means to be able to deliver results over perhaps 2 or 3 options where you execute. And that then helps you to be able to do it more creatively and more effectively as well. So remember that output, KPIs, it's about the result. Input, it's about what you need to execute to achieve your objective, and your efficiency, it's about what's going to be achieved for the effort investment expended. I mentioned about prioritizing which spend to measure and to evaluate. We find with a lot of clients, they spend their budget on lovely creative and executing it, and then you say, well, okay, well, what about your measurement? Yeah, that. How are we going to pay for that? So again, in order to do that, it's really clear to be upfront about being clear on focusing your investment about measuring stuff which is critical to you hitting your objective, not on trying to do everything. The most sort of things that you can control, the effective things that you can control are going to be your inputs and efficiency, because your inputs are about what you need to execute and you can track those real time. And your efficiency, again, as you're tracking your spend, you can understand how you are executing. And those things you're able to measure a lot better. But crucially, to get your output measures, make sure that right from the start, you establish the timings and the methods to post-evaluate. So if you're looking at over a period of time, what is the shift in trial that we have got? Your executional things you can do really quickly. The time that you get your results for the overall objective are going to be much longer. And then thirdly, I think this is the really crucial bit as well, because it's not just about the physical setting of objectives, measuring them, evaluating them. It's about the culture that goes around it. And there are 2 things. One is about the learning culture. So building the capabilities of the teams so that they can use the process, the tools, and the structure and the ecosystem a lot more effectively. But there is also a cultural element there which speaks to this particular quote here. It's about marketing effectiveness needing to move from a justification culture to a learning culture. So it's not just you being on the back foot saying, oh, I'm doing it because I need to just justify it. It's about getting ahead of the game and saying, what works well, let's continue to build on that and do it. What doesn't work so well, let's either see if we can improve it or not do it and find something more effective to do in the future. Okay, so this is about continuous improvement. So again, we recognize as well that evaluating campaigns and activities do have their difficulties, but these three things are really necessary here. It's about making sure that you've got your objectives clear at the beginning. That's your starting point. Otherwise, you do get very subjective evaluations and you get back into that vicious spiral. Make sure that you do allocate the right kind of time and resource to teams to do it effectively. And thirdly, don't miss out on an opportunity to learn and improve, because that also has a value to it as well. The final point here again is the thing that we mentioned that we do. We like to integrate the commercial functions. So with that cross-functional thinking and creativity, you get much better results and much more powerful results. So, okay, you may say, well, that's all very well and good, but what's really the value that can be had in there? I mean, overall, there is great variance in what CPG companies do spend on A&P, both in the UK and around the world. But Gartner did a study of more than 300 companies, and on average, it's about 12%. It ranges sometimes, a few companies, they go into the early 20s, some go down well below 10%, but on average, it's out at 12%. So in many cases, that is the biggest line of investment that a company has. So it's really, really important. Now, if you can then say to your board, by putting in an ROI focused marketing effectiveness capability, I can get you a range of between 3 and 8%, which BCG and McKinsey have proven can deliver. That's really kind of exciting for a board to hear, that you can get that range of top and bottom line growth by putting in practice this capability. But also, you've got to recognize that 60% of marketers still don't believe that they have the right approaches to be able to implement a measurement and evaluation system. So there is value to be had there, there is improvement to be had, and there are capabilities to be built. So, in summary, just want to just sum up with leaving you with these thoughts here about unlocking the full value of marketing effectiveness. It's about making sure that we focus on our return on objectives rather than always on ROI. There is a place for ROI. I'm not saying it isn't, but it's about making sure that we do have the right balance between long-term, medium-term, and short-term objectives, and that we get those things right. Secondly, it's about embedding that mindset with marketing teams and building their capabilities. And thirdly, it is about that long-term generation of revenue growth across your portfolio through that excellence in execution and ensuring that you do get better at that, you get more effective at that. And in the end, really what it comes down to is building those capabilities, building those ways of working, and nurturing talent. And really what you want to is to get your teams to say, I have moved from I think to I know. Anyway, thank you very much indeed for listening. That's given you hopefully a lot of food for thought, and also helped you to start to think about marketing effectiveness in a different way, or reinforced some of what you already knew, and hopefully it's added a bit of value to you. But thank you very much for spending time watching and listening this webinar, and I'll hand back over to James.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, Chris. Yeah, fantastic stuff, actually. And obviously, we have some time for questions. So if anyone does have any questions, please do pop them onto the Q&A bar. But I mean, I've got a couple to start with whilst people are thinking of their questions or tapping them out anyway. The first one goes all the way back to the beginning. Obviously, we did our poll, and it was quite an equal split between sort of the setting of objectives, the measuring the right things, but even evaluating piece as well. I mean, is that standard from what you guys see, or do you tend to see that there is actually one that over indexes more when you're talking to kind of clients outside of this webinar?
It varies really. It doesn't surprise me, and I'm actually quite glad that so many people put lack of clarity around objectives, because that is often perhaps the hardest nut to crack, and mainly because I think there is a lot that people don't necessarily perceive as being the wrong objectives or focusing in on the wrong areas. And it's often the conversation, that starting point, where suddenly people go, oh yeah, right. Yeah, you're right, actually. And it may well be that, for example, it's not expressed necessarily as a behavior change, or that there isn't that linking between activities up to your campaigns, to your plans, or to your strategy.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, and I guess sort of linked as well, actually, to that thing. I think one of the things that I pulled out was your slide around the sort of the moving from justification culture through to learning culture. And I guess again, this sort of slide that followed it as well was about the sort of the 60% of marketers don't think they're measuring the right things. How do you? I guess it's two questions here. One is, how do you move people to the learning culture from the justification culture? I'm sure that's probably a big question, and you probably can't answer it all right now, but if you've got any kind of perspective on it. And the other one is, why is that figure so big?
Yes, that second question. I'm not quite sure why it is that big, but I'll see if there is something in there. I think the first question is perhaps a bit more important, because this isn't something that you can do all in one go. It will just be too much. And just like any kind of change management, you've got to do things progressively. And a lot of it is to start to understand where your clients really need help. And we do that through an assessment. And through that, we start to focus on the areas of real need. So if it is, for example, that you don't have that link between objectives in your between your strategy and your execution, that may be the place to start. Another place to start is to say, well, okay, if it is with brands that have a particular particular issue in terms of either setting or measuring objectives or measurement issues, perhaps it's there. But what you do is you focus on the areas where you think the greatest issue lies, that you can then get the right support from mainly the board and start to tackle. But it is really, I think, crucial to get over that this isn't just a process, this isn't just a set of tools, and it doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And I think to answer the second bit, I think the number is still too big, mainly because already the overall building of capabilities of marketing people to be able to set clear objectives, measure and evaluate, as well as the culture within the companies, is such that I think that's why this thing still keeps going round and round and round, despite all of the very, very technical things that we have.
Definitely.
James, if I can just interject, I think I've got a question for Martin from the Q&A, which I think is an interesting one. And then secondly, I was going to say, generally speaking, with our clients, evaluation of activities is a very, very kind of poor end of the process. So generally, because we're all under a lot of pressure, a lot of time pressure, what we find with our clients is once they've executed, they're literally moving on to the next activity, the next piece of work, etc. And the evaluation stage and the learning of that evaluation tends not to be processed in the way that perhaps some of the rest of the commercial process is. So I definitely point people to at least be cognizant of evaluation and try and include it where possible. The second point is the question, which is how should brands and agencies measure effectiveness of live experiences, Martin?
Okay, I think it all goes back to what are you trying to achieve through your live experience? Yeah, so what is it in terms of the behavior, attitude or perception change of your target audience? And I take it, if I understand this correctly, the live experience, we're talking about events?
Yeah, I think that's the case, yeah.
So it's really
Events
about
kind of experience. Yes.
experiential, exactly. So so again, it's about what behavior or perception or attitude are you really trying to change? And then start to say, well, okay, first thing, how can live experience be able to do that? And that comes down to executing to achieve those perception, behavior or attitudinal changes. So when you look at how those things are executed, think, what are they really trying to do here? And it's actually much easier to be able to say, if we are trying to achieve a particular perception change through a live experience, you then focus all of your execution and all of your execution measures to ensure that your activities that you do will deliver that perception change.
Cool.
I hope that makes sense.
Sounds good. Yeah, no, definitely so. I think I was just looking through questions again, and I think again, just to kind of build on that point, and also I think the point that obviously you made earlier about the kind of the measurement as well. I think with one, it's more of a kind of a less of a question, more of a kind of observation, which is teams too often gloss over short-term or medium-term and for long-term objective, which is why you can't break down and effectively measure what you're doing. So I guess that's kind of, I presume you'd agree with that kind of sort of statement there, that is true. One question, or one other final question, I think we're sort of coming to kind of quarter two, sort of wrapping this up, which is how important is it to have overall brand stroke product rather objectives to help for inform the kind of the ROI for activities?
Well, that it is crucial. Yeah, without that, I mean, that's the starting point for everything really. And I would spend a lot of time making sure that objectives are clear and that everybody understands what they are, and that will be your guiding point to be able then to execute really well.
Cool, great stuff. Well, look, Thank you very much for that, guys. It was really, really interesting. I certainly enjoyed it. Hopefully the audience did. For those of you that are still on, we will send you a recording of this so you can rewatch it in your own leisure. There is a quick poll that I've jumped up that people are filling out already. Fantastic. Do fill it in before you jump off this call. We'll hang around for about sort of a minute or so you can. But yeah, I think it just leaves me to say, you know, Martin, Chris, thanks for your time. For doing this. Anyone who has any questions, do get in touch with Quantum, and we can kind of pass those questions on to the guys as well, I think, as well. So happy to answer any questions via email or off that as well if you get in touch as well. But yeah, as I say, thanks for that, both of you. I think it's a great session, and yeah, thank you all for joining.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, James, for organising this for us all, and for everybody for joining too. Thanks a lot, and I hope to speak to you soon.
Take care, guys.